My name's Fabian Horton. I'm a PLT lecturer at the College of Law based in Melbourne. It's a national program. I'm also the director of the virtual law firm Connect Law. I've been operating that for over 7 years, though mainly now we focus on producing technologies for law firms. I'm also currently undertaking my PhD. My area of research is focusing primarily on technology's effect on the law, and I mean that in a broad sense, but particularly I'm looking at the effect of technology on the legal skills that are required by lawyers and how that is changing and what is being required by lawyers moving into the future and how we are to interact with all the innovations and new technologies that we have. And that's a very interesting area of research, as you can well imagine at this time. It's becoming very topical. What I've found in my research and what I've seen during some of the information that's been given at this inquiry is that there seems to be a lot of mix-up between what I call the three areas of legal disrupt. There seems to be a sort of a misunderstanding, not a misunderstanding, but perhaps not a clear delineation of what's happening. In my research, to help that, I proposed what I call a knowledge framework. The idea of this is that it gives people an understanding of the different areas of innovation that is occurring, different areas of disrupt. The three areas that I have identified are what we call the legal code disrupt, the legal culture disrupt, and the legal industry disrupt. Now, most of these have been talked about in various literature that has come before it. The legal code example deals with issues not only to do with, say, different laws becoming problematic. Let's take, for example, Uber and ride sharing, but also the different ways in which law might be coming about in terms of how to regulate behaviour. For example, technology taking place of law. So you can only do certain things by using a certain piece of technology. So that in essence becomes a pseudo-law. And that's been talked about most prominently by scholars such as Lessig. The legal culture disrupt I talk about is a cultural thing that happens in our society when there's great changes. We look at the World Economic Forum and their discussion on the fourth industry revolution. We can see that culture in itself is changing, and law in that needs to be able to keep up. And we're finding that that's difficult in itself, that the law has problems just understanding where we are in terms of how we are best to serve society. And again, ride sharing could be seen as a good example of that. Another one is sexting. The issues that were occurring there, and we've seen commission reports talking about that there's a cultural change that has happened during technology, and the law has had a lot of troubles dealing with that. The other issue, and the one that seems to get the most press at the moment, is what I call the legal industry disrupt. And that is where the whole practice of law, the making of laws, how we deal with law in its form of the profession and regulations and governments, that's all being changed. How quickly we are to innovate our laws, how quickly we are to reimagine what the law is supposed to do for us, and how we are to even, as we're talking about today, teach the law and what's important to be teaching when we're teaching the law. So a lot of these three disrupts do have a lot of crossover. So an issue won't necessarily just fall into one or the other. They most often fall across all three. Again, if we consider ride sharing, there's an issue of the legal code, there's definitely an issue of the culture that's happening within that industry, and there's definitely an issue with the industry of law, how we are to respond to that. And we've seen that the governments have got some criticism on how they've responded. So I think it's important for us to be able to have some sort of a framework that we can work through. That just means that we're able to be able to speak a little bit more to certain points. It's very difficult to get across all these issues. Nobody can understand them all. and the literature is actually quite heavy on that. That there's just too much out there happening at the moment. And it also means that we can start to focus on different parts of it when we're looking at different issues and being able to solve those complex problems. So it's just a little bit of a helping hand, I guess.
Thank you for that. Can I ask you, what do the 3 disrupts that you described mean for legal education?
Primarily what it means is that we can then start to focus on the different areas in which we should be assisting students, people coming to the law in understanding. If we just talk about, say, innovation as a general category, are we talking about innovation in the way that we practice the law? And again, that's a very topical one at the moment. Or are we talking about innovative ways of assisting people to do the right thing? Are we talking about innovative ways in which the government to review laws? We could even, I guess, talk about things like voting. So it just helps in being able to compartmentalise a little bit and take it a little bit more into the practical areas of what we're doing in society.
But is that something that the universities have a responsibility for, or PLT providers or employers, or all 3?
In terms of assisting in innovation and understanding innovation, yes, most definitely. Law's a reflection of society. We've got to be able to reflect properly what's happening. We have questions then of where should we be placing some emphasis on that? Do we place that on undergraduate or practical legal training, postgraduate training? And my view is that undergrads should be focusing on probably more the classical type of education, but it doesn't mean that you still can't use innovation and technology within that. There's no point in just talking about old land cases if we move to a blockchain registry. We're going to have to be looking at how the law reflects the current practice. But say if we take legal practice, for example, do we really need to be teaching at an undergraduate level how to deal with producing better apps? At some place, yes, there's that, but I think that postgraduate is probably a better place for doing that. I tweeted just before, perhaps the question that we should be asking is, moving into the future, is legal education training future lawyers, or is the primary purpose to give people an understanding of the law? Because we know that a lot of people that do an undergraduate law degree aren't necessarily doing it for the purpose of being lawyers. I didn't when I went through. I just decided to become a lawyer later. I was in forensics. That's why I did law. And we see that the admissions statistics show that.
Fabian, I wanted to ask you about your PLT Plus course that we've been given some materials about. I must say, as an employer of lawyers, which I am, the 10 subjects that you've covered are terrific and would really well equip somebody to come and work for me. Who takes this program, may I ask? Who's currently studying this PLT Plus? What sort of practitioners are coming through and doing it?
So this is for the PLT students to undertake this as part of our requirements within our course. We have that the students must do 10 hours of CLE or CPD. That's to get them used to what they're going to be doing in practice. They can do that however they like, and we give them some modules to do, but they can also do these 10 modules. If they decide to do those 10 modules which we offer, then they will complete that component of the 10 hours, but they will also get a certificate in business skills. And so that's that. So it's mainly for PLT students. And we see that as part of the ongoing process of training lawyers, new lawyers, to have a better understanding of the business of law.
Yes, I can see that's what you're focusing on with the subject. Michael?
I'm just wondering whether there's specific skills or areas of law that need to be added to either the law school curriculum or to PLT to respond to the changes that we're seeing in the way in which the law is likely to be practiced in the future?
I think there is, though I'm still sort of deciding whether that is a legal education or more a business education, as in the business of law type education. We've got to remember that what we're actually in the midst of is, again, as the World Economic Forum talks about, a fourth industrial revolution. We've got a change in the main tools that we're using to do business now, and that's based in the technologies that we're using. So to be able to properly participate as lawyers and participate in a technology-enhanced society, we've got to have a good understanding of the tools that are being used. If we take even probably 20 years ago, if you said to a lawyer, you've got to know how to type, you've got to know how to do email, some of them might have said, not too sure about that. Isn't that someone else's job? And now they're saying, well, of course I've got to do that. That's a business tool. So we've got to start to consider the types of business tools that we're using. And I think for my money, the computer communication methods are evolving. So we've got to have a good understanding of those types of things. And that can be even just better PowerPoint presentations and things. We know that we're doing more of that type of thing, even through to apps and how we communicate with clients online. The next one is information management. There's so much information that we're dealing with now. We've got to be able to be better at that as lawyers, because the way that our profession is changing, we're becoming much more trusted advisors, and so we're being given a lot more information, not only from our clients, but from all the other areas. So we've got to be able to manage that better. And probably in line with that is data analysis. And I don't mean we have to be technologists and that we have to understand how to program and do that sort of thing. But as a business skill, we've got to be able to analyse the information that we've got within its context, within the legal domain in which we work. If we can't do that, well, then we're not analysing, what it is our job is. We've got these skills. These skills usually, aren't new. We've just got to move with the times in how they are being dealt with now.
Fabian, are there any trends occurring overseas that haven't hit our shores and that we ought to be aware of?
Australia is actually pretty good. We aren't too far behind, probably in terms of how we handle our larger litigation and the technologies that are being used there and the processes that are being used there. We're probably a little behind. But in terms of the technology and the innovation and the thinking, we're up with some of the best, and we actually export a lot of our very good ideas. I was overseas earlier at San Francisco. The gravity that, say, the US has is just so enormous that it brings everyone across. So I wouldn't say that we're too far behind. Probably just we're not at the extent that some of the overseas people are working at. But that's to be expected, so I'm not too worried about that.